Hi, I'm Paul Haenle, Director of the Carnegie Tsinghua Center. In this year's Carnegie Global Dialogue China-EU panel, we've invited Tom Carothers, Senior Vice President for Studies at the Carnegie Endowment, and Erik Brattberg, Director of the Europe Program, to analyze the prospects for China-EU relations and the implications of the rise of populism for EU political stability and foreign policy. I was struck today at the panel by some of the common views our friends in Europe have in regards to looking at China and the United States. I think in both cases, there's a realization that we're looking at a much stronger China and potentially a very strong economic competitor.
So the view on China and Europe is that China has traditionally been an economic partner to Europe, but I think especially in certain Western European capitals, they're beginning to scrutinize Chinese economic activities. There's beginning to be a little bit of a pushback against Chinese investments and acquisitions of companies in Europe.
You see similar dynamics in the United States. There's a huge push from the United States, from the Trump administration, to recalibrate the trade and economic relationship and to get to a point of more reciprocity from the Chinese side in terms of market access, IPR and forced technology transfer, structural issues related to the trade and economic relationship.
But there are also big differences within Europe. We have other countries, especially in Southern and Central Eastern Europe, who very much welcome the opportunities that China brings in terms of investments, in terms of greater trade.
And here I see great potential for the United States and Europe to approach China from the standpoint of common concerns. And that gives the United States and Europe greater leverage in dealing with China. The difference between European perspectives of the Belt and Road and American perspectives is the fact that the Belt and Road actually goes through Europe.
The United States and Europe are reacting quite differently to the Belt and Road Initiative. In the United States, the Belt and Road Initiative is something that's occurring out there in the world, not directly in the United States. In Europe, although Europe is sort of the tail end of the Belt and Road Initiative, it's something that will occur directly in Europe. So Europeans are asking themselves, what can the Belt and Road Initiative do for us, and in what ways might it make our life difficult? Whereas for the United States, it's seen more as a global phenomenon and interpreted more as a geostrategic initiative by China that has geostrategic implications.
So Europeans are beginning to wake up to the Belt and Road Initiative. They're noticing that it's there, and they're beginning to pay more attention to it. And European scholars view the Belt and Road Initiative as, on the one hand, bringing an immense amount of opportunity into Europe, investments into infrastructure, the potential for more trade. But at the same time, both scholars but also European officials are raising concerns about what standards, what regulations, what principles and values that are really underpinning the Belt and Road Initiatives.
So while on one hand, countries in Europe are leaning forward, trying to figure out how they can engage with China in a way that's mutually beneficial, at the same time, there is some wariness about what this initiative really is. In fact, the leaders of the UK and France were here recently in China for a visit. The French said that while they're not opposed to the Belt and Road Initiative, they want to make sure that it's not just a one-way street, that it's actually mutually beneficial. And you see the same sort of wariness from the United States as well.
Populism is really changing Europe. In some countries, it's already produced almost a democratic breakdown. It's also causing policy change. Populists are causing other politicians to be more restrictive about immigration, for example, in order to undercut the appeal of populists. Populism in Europe is putting pressure on the European Union and on European integrity. Populists question authority that's outside their country, and so they look at Brussels and say, why should people in Brussels tell our country what to do? The nationalism that's so common in populism tends to be suspicious of Brussels and the European Union. Also, many populist leaders don't agree with mainstream policies that the European Union is pursuing, so it's harder to have the agreement on basic policies that you've traditionally had within Europe.
The populism and nationalism in Europe is not really directed against China. These are more kind of a reaction to internal European challenges. Whereas there is a backlash against globalization, which is fueled by China's economic rise. I don't necessarily think that in the near term it's going to impact anything, but in the long term, should populists gain more seats in government and be able to shape EU policy, that could lead to potentially Europe turning more isolationist, caring less about the world, closing its own markets, for instance. So that would be a danger.
Thanks for watching, and stay tuned.